G'day, it's Joel Rasmussen for Southern Cross Combat, and I'm here talking to the great Joe Lopez. It is UFC Perth fight night, fight week. Joe, you were no stranger to UFC fight weeks. How has this one been?
Yeah, good. I've got Colby and Jamie on, so looking forward to the boys doing their thing. So it's always exciting fight week.
It, as I mentioned, you've done so many of these. Eventually, it kind of becomes, I'm assuming, like, business, same old thing. You know what I mean? What is your kind of attitude towards a fight week?
Look, there's always such a good positive energy around fight week that it never gets old. So everyone's sort of hyped. And you get to, because I have been here enough, it's good to catch up with a lot of the staff members and the people with the UFC because they've sort of become friends of mine, over the years. So it's always good to catch up with them. And then, like I said, all the fighters are just hyped. So there's this real good positive energy around, and especially when it's in Australia and, the majority are Aussies and, it's a very sort of close-knit community, and we also like to stick together, or I do anyway, and support the Aussie boys. So it's great, and for me, it's been unreal.
We mentioned Colby at the top. He's the first man I wanted to talk to you about. Second fight in the UFC for Colby, coming off first loss of his pro career. I don't think you really kind of know what a fighter fully who they are until they maybe experience something like that. Sometimes a loss can really kind of break a person. From your perspective as his coach, how did he kind of handle the first loss of his pro career?
Look, I just think it was like, for me, it was just like the water off a duck's back. He came back to training, the next week, and he just...
Okay, ignore that. It seems to me that he seems more locked in than usual. I've been a part of a few of Colby's... Like, I've seen him fight week from when he was on the regionals to his first UFC fight. He seems more intense. Have you noticed anything like that? Does it feel any different for him?
Look, Colby's always been really good. I think the only thing that sometimes he's lacked is a belief in himself and his striking ability and his just overall ability. The kid's been training with me since he was a kid, and I think sometimes as you get closer and closer to trying to make it to the UFC, a lot of pressure becomes on you because, hey, if I lose this fight, I've got to start again. And I think now that he's in and he's ready to go, hopefully he just pulls the trigger this fight and shows the world what Colby Thicknesse is made of, Because I've seen it in the gym and I know what he's capable of. Now we need to see it, in the cage on the big show,
What do you make of his opponent, Musasa?
Yeah, he's a strong, big, athletic guy, I don't think he's as technical as Colby. I don't think he's got a ground game or anything like Colby. But again, everybody's got a puncher's chance. He's very athletic. He's had a few knockouts in his career. And, so he's, everyone's got a puncher's chance.
You mentioned Jamie at the top as well. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this because Jamie's been training at freestyle for a while, but now he's like fully moved. He lives near the gym now. Do you consider Colby or Jamie like your second guy in the UFC? Like, is Jamie like a freestyle guy now?
Look, Jamie's, a Central Coast guy and is a freestyle guy, but, Colby's been training with me since he's a kid. So, and Alex started with me. So I count them as my fighters, and I do with Jamie too. I look, he's part of the team. He's a good team player, but, he's not originally from my gym, but not saying I've got no respect for him or anything like that. But, Colby and Alex, they both started their careers with me and are still with me,
Well, for so long it had been Alex flying the freestyle flag. Now to have Colby in it, how is it now to have like a second guy in the UFC?
It's good because it's sort of given the gym a bit of, I guess, credibility. I've never been one. If everyone knows me, I don't like the limelight. So I've always stayed back from it. And I didn't care if other gyms took the limelight and took all the credit for Alex. That's never been my goal. My goal is just to make Alex and whoever trains with me better. That's where I get my buzz from, not my name going up in lights and all that. as things went on with Alex, it did start to not affect me, but it affected like Colby and all the other team members, because they were putting in the work day in, day out, and we'd go over to City Kickboxing or one of the other gyms for a week, and everyone would promote those gyms as, hey, this is where Alex trains, and it never bothered me. But then when it started bothering the teammates, then I thought, wait, man, I've got to step up and make it, hey, Alex is from my gym, and these boys deserve the credit because they're the guys that are putting their bodies on the line with Alex day in, day out.
Talking about how is Jamie looking? I talked to Colby earlier. He said it's good to have Jamie in the room, but he's now later to class now that he lives close to the gym than when he lived on the Central Coast. And I talked to Jamie in the lobby, and he was like, "Yeah, that's probably true." How is it to have Jamie in the gym full time?
Yeah, really good. Jamie's a good kid. Great team member. That if he wasn't, he wouldn't be there. To be part of our team, you've got to be a team member. You've got to be there for your teammates, more importantly than anything. And yeah, he's there. Even though he looks like a homeless person walking to the gym every morning. He walks up with his dog and his little shopping bag. I go, Jamie, you look homeless.
What is the if there is one? Like you mentioned that you're a guy who's all about getting everyone better and supporting the Australian scene. And I talked to Della about it. Like he did time over at Freestyle before both Volk and him had the title fights. What is like, I'm assuming Freestyle doesn't have an exact like open door policy, but heaps of people do come through. What is your what's like the criteria for like, okay, you can come train with us?
Like I said, you've got to be a team player, number one. And two, and I've had it in the past where guys come to the gym, do their camp, and then they disappear and I don't see them again. That's not a team player, because you're not there for your camp. You've got to be there for your teammates' camps and be there and be a body for them and help them get better, because everybody gets a turn, And Alex is a perfect example of that. When it's not his turn, he is the best teammate on earth. He'll help the boys be the perfect body, and that's what I look for. That you got to be there, like I said, for the team. If it's Alex's turn to fight, it's all about him. If it's Colby's turn to fight, it's all about Colby, And if it's Jamie's turn, it's all about Jamie. And everybody gets their turn, And you got to be there for them when it's their turn, and they're going to be there when it's your turn,
Talking about Alex, there's a lot being said about, he called for December. He called for Lerone Murphy. Has there been any kind of movements on that?
Nothing as yet. I can't say too much.
I understand.
But there's some talks, but I can't say anything at the moment.
I understand. It could be there's a few guys it could be, but if it is Lerone, what do you make of a matchup against Lerone?
Lerone's a good matchup for Alex. He's obviously very skillful and he can do what would you call it, just things on the fly, and he's got a good read. But I think Alex is just going to be his fight IQ's way too good. And if you see what Pico did to him on the ground, if Alex gets him on the ground, he's just going to maul him, because Alex, no disrespect to the guy, Alex is a different beast on the ground. When Alex gets you down, he can hold you, and it's just a horrible, horrible thing to have Alex on top of you, beaten down on you, If you look at the first round with Diego, Alex took him down. Diego, for the next 4 rounds, just didn't want to go back to that ground. And Diego's no slouch on the ground. You can see what he did to John Silver, but Diego did not want to go back on the ground with Alex because, that's... Alex is a different beast when he's on top of you and he's fucking punching down on you.
What did you make of Diego's performance against Jean?
Yeah, I mean, he won, so you can't take that away from him. I was just surprised really more with John Paul's on the ground. I thought he would have done a lot better. But Diego was just ragdolling him really and playing with him. It was like a black belt with a purple belt. He was, trying to get out of the mount and he just couldn't. He was just doing big, solid movements and no real, kipping or anything to try and get out. Which really surprised me.
Do you think that was a good enough showing by Diego to warrant a rematch against Alex?
Mate, when you knock somebody out like that, that's got a... I mean, John Silver had a lot of hype behind him in that fight. He's had a lot of knockouts, and he's been putting on a show. And the UFC loves showmen, and I've always said that it's not a lot of the times who is the best fighter, it's who's the most popular or who's the most trendy at the time,
We've talked about Alex, obviously UFC champion. We've talked about Colby, a guy you brought through. We talk about Jamie, a guy who's in the UFC who's now come to the gym. And those things. A man who is not in the UFC, but is carving his path, is Case of Murdoch. What do you bother yourself with talks of like, we want to get you to the UFC by this time or by this? Like, do you approach any of it with like that type of plan, or are you like, we'll get there when we get there?
I don't really think about it that way. It's just the process, and the good thing about all those guys you just mentioned, they're all very active fighters. So they love to fight and they love to train. So it's never a problem. I know it's just a matter of time, The hardest thing with Kasib has been trying to match him more than anything. For the first 12 months that he trained with me, I could not match him. I mean, well, I'll give you an example. When Hex went to New Zealand, they said they were going to match him there. And I said, I got a couple of sponsors in, and I spoke to the promoter and I said, you just offer, get him an opponent in New Zealand. They can have his purse. I think it was ended up being like a $5,000 purse to get Kasib a matchup for his debut. Couldn't get anybody. It was, I thought in New Zealand we could get, because some of those guys will do anything for $5, but for $5,000 I couldn't get anybody to face Kasib, But I was sort of lucky that I've got some good friends in that own Bali MMA, and they do some fight promotions over there, and I reached out to them, and I was lucky enough that they jumped on and they were able to match him, and. It wasn't through lack of trying, because we tried so hard to get him matched up. And even to this day, it's so hard. His last Hex fights, nobody in Australia will fight him. So we have to go abroad to get fighters. And then I can show you on my phone the list that the promoters give me. And we go, they'll give me a list of 3 guys. I'll go 1, 2, 3, and he come back. None of them want it. And I'm not just talking about... I'm talking about, especially in Bali, say, there's a lot of Russians, Eastern Bloc countries. There's a lot of, there's people from all around the world, but there is a lot of Russians there at the moment. And they give me the list of these Russian guys, and 90% of them say no, or they ask for some ridiculous money, which means they don't want to fight him, because they know there's a good chance they're going to lose. So if I'm going to lose, I might as well make it worth my while,
What did you make of Kasib's last fight?
Look, one thing I always say about the Japanese and the Korean guys, they're going to be the tough guys. If you're a Japanese or a Korean fighter, you're going to be tough. So it's never going to be an easy fight, because these guys, like I said, they're tough and they're well seasoned, and you're going to be in for a fight. They're not going to roll over if they cop a little hit or anything, And I've seen that with Alex, Alex has fought a couple of Japanese guys. I remember when he won the world title in PXC, I can't remember the guy, Yoki something. They were carting him away in an ambulance, and we just went over to wish him all the best, and he looks at us, he goes, I want a rematch. And the guy looked like the Elephant Man. He's getting carted away in an ambulance because he's that beat up. And he just looks at it and goes, I want a rematch. And that's the toughness of those Japs and those Korean guys, You can never underestimate them.
Kasib's next opponent, he has one. He's a very active man. He'll be fighting Chris Ustajanovski, a name that the scene knows. It is someone that the scene is familiar with. What do you make of Chris?
Yeah, Chris is good. He's come down and done some sparring with us, and he's fought Colby twice. So, he like you said, he's been around the scene for a while. It's credit to him to stepping up to want to fight Kasib, because Kasib ain't an easy fight, and power to him.
What's your kind of attitude on that? If he's come down and do sparring and now he's fighting one of the guys, like some people can really piss some people off. Some people don't really care. Like, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't really care. Sparring is one thing, fighting's a different thing. Here or there. Australian MMA scene is pretty small. We haven't got that many people, so eventually you're going to train or do something with somebody at some time, and whether you have to fight. I mean, Alex and Jamie fought, and now they're teammates, so that shows you, what happens in Australian MMA, Brad Riddell fought Jamie as well in the last camp. There's Jamie, Alex, and Brad Riddell all in the same training room training together, mates, and trying to help each other all get better, and that's what MMA should be about. You have your fight, at the end you shake hands and you move on. It's just a game. It's not like I'm threatening your family or I'm going to take something away. It's a game, and for me, I just like to play the game, without it being personal.
You mentioned Bali earlier. We are currently doing this interview in Perth. The last time I saw you, we were in Queensland. Before that, I saw you in Melbourne. You were like constantly on the road, and that's kind of a little bit of like the life of this. But how do you kind of like deal with that? And how is like the work-life balance when work takes you away so often?
Look, any coach that's got a lot of fighters, I just caught up with Eugene Behrman. He's on the road more than what I am, and you've just got to, again, it's you play the game, and it's part of the game, a lot of people might criticise, like say, oh, how can you coach and all that, but the coaching is done beforehand and everything else, like once the fight camp starts, there's certain drills and certain things that we do, and then what I do, I watch, and certain these, like I always say, everybody's good when they're fresh and they're athletic and everything else. I got drills there where I exhaust the people, and then I put them into bad situations, and I want to see how they react, and that's where I build the game plan on the person. Hey, he's struggling to get out of mount, so let's work on his mount escapes. He's no good when he's in guard. We'll work on him trying to pass the guard or fight from guard. Or whatever it may be, and then again, it's the opponent that you got. When you get to the big shows, obviously you know a little bit about your opponent and you can get some tape on it. But with the amateurs, a lot of the times you don't know who you're going to get. You could get Alex Volkanovski in his first fight, and what are you going to do? Alex had to have that first fight, like anybody did. So when you're an amateur, you don't know what you're going to get, and that's why a lot of the times at amateur shows that the fights go very quickly, because it's not saying that they're mismatched, but you don't know who you're getting, But once, like I said, they turn pro or they've been in the scene for a bit, everybody's got tape on them, and then you can work a game plan out, on that guy's strengths and his weaknesses.
Talking about traveling, on the TV behind the camera is the replay of CJI2. You went over for CJI2. That was the first CJI you got to attend.
Yeah.
As you were telling me before, off camera. How was it? How was it, CJI? Did it live up to everything you thought it would be?
I had a ball. It was a great time. I'll tell you. There was a little bit of controversy at the end, which sort of marred it. But overall, the 2 days of the event was unreal. Had a ball, met a lot of really good people. Got to hang out with Gabby Garcia, which was really cool. And, it was good.
You mentioned at the top about you didn't start doing this for fame. And, you never really gave a shit if anyone knew kind of like who it was. I think you're a guy who has begun to grow that fame, though. Like, I remember I think it's old, like right when Craig released like the Keep Jiu-Jitsu Gay shirt, he was like, there was that video of him wrestling you and he's like trying to put the shirt on you. And I remember, I think he said in a video, he's like, we need to find a way to get Joe to be famous. Like, we just need to make this guy famous. You go over to CJI, they're cutting to you while you're in the crowd. There's a whole bunch of photos and stuff. How do you find a little bit of the maybe newly found fame?
Honestly, I don't see it because I don't really look at social media. How I get my social media when I do things is, my mates will send me the clips and go, look at you being an idiot, or look at this, what are you doing? Are you fucking nuts? And that's how I get it, because I probably look a little bit more social media when I'm away with the boys here because that's all they do. So if you can't beat them, you join them. But they'll be saying, oh, did you read this and that? And I'm going, where do you find all this stuff, because I don't know where to look. But I like it that way, because honestly, I don't know how these guys have got time to spend so much time on the social media making these posts and doing this and doing that, because I think I've done one post. I started my own Insta after the gym one, more so for people to message me than to get my own identity, because everybody knows Tara looks after my social media, and I got sick of her sending me a screenshot. Do you want to answer this message? And then some of the boys are pretty writing some inappropriate things, and I didn't think it was right Tara had to read these things. So I said, I'll get my own, then she doesn't have to read it. And and I've done, I think out of all my posts, I've done one, and I think it was a picture at the CJI. And I said, this is my first post. Every other post, somebody else has done it for me. I'm proud of that.
Joe, I thank you so much for the time. You do have places to be. What does kind of now until fight night look like for you?
We're just going to head down now. Jamie's just about to start his weight cut. Colby will start his in about half an hour. So all the boys are going to get down there and help the boys cut the weight. And then just looking forward. I mean, we always say, the first fight is making weight, and that's the hardest part. So we've got to stick behind the boys, make sure they get through it, and I'm sure they will. And tomorrow we've got the weigh-ins, and then Sunday they have a bit of fun. That's the way we always look at it. The hardest thing is the weight cut.
Excellent, Mr. Lopez. I thank you very much for the time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.